Hello and welcome to Talking Tudors, a fortnightly podcast about the ever-fascinating Tudor dynasty. My name is Natalie Grueninger and I'll be your host and guide on this journey through 16th century England. Are you ready to step through the veil of time into the dazzling and dangerous world of the Tudor court? Without further ado, it's time to talk Tudors. Hello everyone, welcome back to Talking Tudors, episode 51. I'm your host, Natalie Grueninger. Before we begin this week's episode, I'd like to give my heartfelt thanks to the wonderful patrons who continue to support this podcast. I'm so very grateful for your encouragement and immense generosity. A full list of patrons is available on my website under the Patrons tab. If you love Talking Tudors and would like to show your appreciation and support the work I do, just click on the Be My Patron on Podbean badge on the homepage of my website www.onthetudortrail.com, or click on the Be a Patron button on the Podbean app. Join the Talking Tudors patron family and you'll be automatically entered into our patron-only monthly giveaways. October's prize is a Tudor book bundle, kindly sponsored by the History Press. It contains 3 fabulous Tudor titles: Catherine Howard by Conor Byrne, Tudor Folk Tales by David Tong, and A History of the Tudors in 100 Objects by John Matusiak. In other news, I'm delighted to share that Sarah Morris, aka the Tudor Travel Guide, and I are running a 4-day virtual progress focusing on one part of the 1535 progress undertaken by Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. We've put together a virtual progress through Gloucestershire, retracing the footsteps of Anne Boleyn and Henry VIII as part of the 1535 summer progress. You are cordially invited to pack up your virtual belongings and call for your horse to be made ready. Join us as we travel virtually from Sudeley Castle via Tewkesbury, Gloucester, Leonard Stanley and Berkeley Castle before arriving at the romantic Thornbury Castle. And here's the best bit, it's entirely free to join. Find out more at my website On the Tudor Trail. Click on the post entitled The 1535 Royal Progress. I'll also include the sign-up link in the show notes. Now, on to today's episode. I'm thrilled to share with you my conversation with the archaeologist Heather Knight, who's currently leading the excavation of the Boars Head Playhouse in London. More straight after this short musical break, courtesy of guitarist Jon Sayles. to Talking Tudors, Heather. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
That's fabulous. I'm really excited to be chatting with you today. I thought we could begin by you introducing yourself to our listeners and telling us a little bit about your background.
Well, yeah, my name's Heather Knight and I'm a senior archaeologist with MOLA. I've worked in commercial archaeology for around 30 years. And for the last 15 years or so, my main interest has been theatre archaeology.
Lovely. And what sparked your interest in history and in archaeology in the first place?
I can't remember a time in my life when I wasn't interested in archaeology, even if that was when I was a child digging in my parents' garden, looking for pieces of pottery. So it's just something that's always been there. It's always been my kind of passion.
And you're currently leading the excavation at the Boars Playhouse in Whitechapel. I'm really excited to talk to you about this. So tell us about the history of this 16th century playhouse.
It's a really, really interesting project and it's a really interesting site. It's a playhouse that's often sort of overlooked when we think about London playhouses. It was originally an inn. It was sort of built in the 1530s, but there was performance out the back of the inn before they had a purpose-built building for it. But in 1598, they actually built a stage surrounded by galleries so the audience could watch performance. And then the year later, it was kind of more money was invested in the project and they came up with a much nicer, grander structure. So we're looking at a rectangular playhouse rather than those kind of round buildings like the Globe.
Right, yes.
And it's outside the city.
Okay, and so who owned it?
Well, it's owned actually. It has quite a complicated ownership,
right.
But various people actually own various galleries, which is why we know so much about it because they were sort of constantly fighting in court over who owed who money. But initially, it was a guy called Oliver Woodliff, and he was the one that came up with the idea of actually building the playhouse in the first place.
Okay, and do we know any of the plays that were performed there?
We do, even though it's, not one of these playhouses that we can connect to Shakespeare. There's certainly plays by Middleton were performed there, and William Rowley, and Decker, and Hayworth. So they're very much sort of city-based plays, sort of set in the city for a city audience.
Okay, and before we talk a little bit more about the excavations that you're currently involved in, it would be really great if you could tell us a little bit, just in general, about the development of playhouses in Tudor England. When were they built and who were the theatre goers at this time?
It's quite a sort of uniquely London phenomena, really. We have, as I say, performance in inns and indoor playing spaces before permanent purpose-built playhouses arrived. But in the 1570s, we seem to have the right kind of a large population, a rise in a middle class with a disposable income, and this all kind of comes together that there's this demand for entertainment, and a few enterprising folk start building purpose-built playing spaces. So they're normally built out in the suburbs. So, there's land to build on outside the city walls. And the earliest date from the 1570s, and they see their peak, I guess, around 1600. But by 1642, they've all closed due to the Civil War.
And is it an affordable thing to go and see a play at one of these playhouses?
It was a really affordable thing, maybe a penny or 2 pennies to get in for an afternoon's entertainment.
Well, that sounds pretty good. Now, I'd like to talk more about the current excavation that you're doing. So what are the aims of the project?
Well, MOLA have been commissioned by Unite students to excavate and record the archaeology on their site before they commence construction of their new development. So we've already identified the location of the Boar's Head through trial excavation on the site last year and beginning of this year. And they've actually designed their foundations for their new building to avoid those sensitive areas. So we're looking at the moment, areas to the north of the playhouse, which are the sort of outside spaces associated with it.
So you weren't aware of this site before you were called in, or is this something you were kind of looking at prior to being called?
Well, the location of, I think, all London playhouses was something that's really been studied by academics from the 19th century. And in the 20th century, one academic in particular, Professor Herbert Berry, spent an awful lot of time going through historic records, like the court documents, and looking at historic maps. And he'd actually pinpointed the location of the Boar's Head to the site. But we actually did that trial excavation just to see if any of it did actually survive.
and hopefully something has survived.
Yeah, it has. It survived, particularly sort of 19th and 20th century foundations,
Yeah.
and bits of the playhouse do still exist on the site.
Well, that is exciting. Now, tell us about some of the artifacts that you've uncovered or discovered, and what they tell us. Do they tell us anything more about playhouses and the people that attended these in Tudor England?
Well, as you know, as we're still working our way through those.
Yeah.
We're still working on it, but the one thing that's kind of immediate to me is there's an awful lot of beer mugs.
Right.
So this is definitely about having a good time. We're at the back of an inn. Part of the playgoing experience is definitely having a drink. So yeah, that's kind of the feeling I'm getting from the finds that we're finding at the moment. It really is a place of entertainment. It's having a good time in the afternoon.
Fabulous. And so how much, you said you're still obviously working your way through, how much longer do you have on this project, do you think?
We have a few more weeks, and that's plenty of time to finish what we're doing at the moment. And then the main construction phase can start on site. But obviously then I'll be back here in the office actually making sense of the things we've found.
Okay, and how will you preserve the remains that you've found? Will they be preserved at all?
They are. They're preserved in situ.
Okay.
And we've covered them up with a type of fabric called geotextile, which lets the water kind of naturally percolate up and down through the soil around them. They have soft soil put all around them, and then the foundations for the new building, as I said, have been designed to avoid the actual remains. So they'll be all nicely, safely tucked up down underneath the new building. Okay,
lovely. And if there's any artifacts that come out, will you sort of take them out, or will you keep them in situ?
No, the associated finds, they will come back, and our specialists will look at them, and then they'll give me more information about the things that we found. And that will give us a better understanding of how the site was used in the 16th century and in its later development.
Okay, and now apart from working on this very exciting excavation, you've also worked on other Elizabethan playhouse sites. Could you tell us about some of those locations?
I have. The nearest site to the Boar's Head would be the site of the Curtain. It's about 900 metres north of the Boar's Head, and that was sort of up and running in the sort of 1570s. And that was, again, it was a square, rectangular structure. And then about 200 metres north of that is the site of the theatre. And that was London's first polygonal purpose-built playhouse. It was sort of 14-sided structure. And that was up and running in 1576. So these two really early playhouses are really interesting, especially the Curtain in relation to the Boar's Head, because it's in the sort of around 1600, 1610, it's the same group of actors are using both buildings. As an organisation, MOLA has excavated part of the globe on Bankside.
Lovely.
We've looked at the Hope, and obviously we dug the Rose back in the 1980s. That was the first building, first of these type to be looked at. So there are only ever a handful. So to have the opportunity to look at now 6 is quite remarkable.
That's very, very lucky. Now, I saw that the public were recently invited to tour the archaeological excavation of the Boar's Head Playhouse. Are there any future, I know you've only got a few weeks left, are there any future events planned?
Well, that's right, because we're sort of moving away from where the actual Boar's Head foundations are now. The next kind of planned things for the site, we're hoping to have walking tours and maybe some evening lectures to actually explain the kind of things that we're finding. Oh,
that sounds great. And how can people find out about those events?
They will be advertised on the MOLA website, I think on the events page.
Excellent, and I'll add links to that to make it nice and easy for listeners to find. I'll add that to the show notes. Now, I know you've got to go to work, but I can't let you go just yet, because towards the end of our little episodes, we always like to play what I call a game of 10 to go. So it's just 10 sort of quick questions just to get to know you a little bit better. Heather, are you ready for that?
Well, I'm ready. Let's go.
Let's do it. Something you love about where you live.
I live in Surrey and I love the green open spaces.
What about a favourite childhood book?
That's really interesting. Do you know, the first book I can remember having as a child would probably be the Rupert Annual.
And what do you like to do in your spare time?
Well, my spare time's pretty much like my day job, really. I'm a trustee of a local museum, so that keeps me
Oh,
really
okay.
busy.
Fabulous. All right. And do you have a favourite season?
Oh, for me, it's got to be the summer.
Nice. And you've just had a very nice summer from what I hear. What was your first paid job?
My first paid job was as an archaeologist.
Oh, that's wonderful. Very lucky to know what you
I
wanted to
was
do
very
from young.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was my first job.
All right. Now, if you could bring someone, rather than travel back in time, if you could bring someone from the past into our time to show them something or just to hang out with them a bit, who would you choose?
Oh, that I've got so many people I could choose right now. I would, at the moment, love that person to be Herbert Berry, the theatre historian
Right.
who worked so much on the Boar's head, and just to show him, yes, you were right. You were right. It was here, and this is it. That would be
That's
lovely.
lovely. Yeah, I like that. Do you have a signature dish that you're known for, something you cook up for family and friends?
Fish pie, I think. I think that would be the vote.
Okay, very good. And what is your ideal Friday night?
I don't know if I have an ideal Friday night. It would definitely be friends, and it'd probably definitely be talking.
Lovely, that sounds good. Nice and relaxing. Is there a historic house that you enjoy visiting? I'm sure there is, but tell us about one of the historic houses you enjoy visiting.
There's so many, but
Yeah.
National Trust house called The Vine.
Oh, yes, I know the one.
Yeah, and I love the panelling. I've
Yeah,
got a
it's
thing about
beautiful. Yeah, that's
beautiful.
right. Lots of nice Tudor links with that one too, which I like. And lucky last question, what is something that you're currently looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to lots and lots and lots of things, but right now I'm going to spend the weekend visiting my eldest child. They've just gone to university, so I haven't seen them for a few weeks, so that'll be
Oh,
nice.
that's lovely. Very nice. Now, I still can't let you go. Sorry, Heather. I know I said the last question,
Okay.
but and we always end with a Tudor takeaway. So something that our listeners can go off and explore after the episode. Could be a movie to watch, a film, a book to read. Do you have a Tudor takeaway for us?
I do. It would
Yay.
be the Before Shakespeare website. I've worked with the Before
Okay.
Shakespeare project for a few years, and that really does kind of look at the evolution of the commercial playhouse in London, how it came into being. We look at it from lots of different angles, lots of sort of performance and all sorts of things. So yeah, have a look at that.
Fantastic. All right, I'll add that link as well. That sounds wonderful. And we never had that Tudor takeaway before, so it's always good in almost 50 episodes to get a new one. So thank you so much. And I know you've got lots on your plate at the moment, so I appreciate you talking Tudors and playhouses with me. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of Talking Tudors. Thank you so much for listening. If you have any comments or suggestions or just want to say hi, please get in touch with me via my website www.onthetudortrail.com, where you will also find show notes for today's episode. If you've enjoyed the show, please share the podcast with friends and family and click on the all-important follow button so you'll never miss an episode. I also invite you to join our Talking Tudors podcast group on Facebook, where you can interact with other Tudor history lovers and hear all the behind-the-scenes news. It's time now for us to re-enter the modern world. As always, I look forward to talking Tudors with you again very soon.